Well, I know it's a bit late in the month, but Happy New Year. Happy 2014, everyone. I'm terribly sorry. First, my voice is not exactly up to par, so excuse me. But I'm terribly sorry it took me so long to make this next video for the new Academy. This is number 5. I was going to, excuse me, I was going to show you the next step in learning things like chess tactics. That includes pins, forks, and skewers. But one thing led to another, and it took me too much time to do it. So I want to tell you that first, I included a video from someone else. The St. Louis Chess Club had a lecture for young kids on that exact subject, and he does a really good job. That is in the playlist. Please check that out. Also, my old Academy, several times over, I have covered pins and forks and skewers. So I decided to, excuse me, I'm sorry. I decided to instead, I had just recently played a few games online, and I was getting killed like 10 games in a row. Finally, I won a couple of games in a row. So I saved them, and I wanted to show you them as an example of how an actual game is played. And this first game I want to show you, I can show you where I missed the chance to fork. So let me just start moving the pieces forward. I'm playing black. I did win this game. This is not my normal way of playing. For some reason, I don't know. The game went this way. My opponent decided to capture. I decided to capture, not worry about the queen. We exchanged the queens, and so on. Excuse me. I'm sorry. You gotta excuse me. I'm not actually sick, but it seems like my voice is going on me or something. But otherwise, I feel fine. Any case, he did manage to get a pawn right now, but I'm going to be getting that pawn back. Now here's a pin. Here's the first thing about the pins, skewers, and forks I wanted to show you. You see, this is moving the bishop here. What that does is it pins his knight. Okay? He cannot move his knight because he'll be putting himself in check. So that will be an illegal move. This is known as a pin. Okay? It's a critical pin because it's his king. So he cannot move that knight. Okay? I don't have any skewers in this game, but a skewer is very similar to a pin, except that in a skewer, the more powerful piece being skewed or pinned is in the front. Usually it's the king. Okay? So a lot of times you can skewer your opponent's king to his queen, and you put him in check, and he has to move his king, and you end up being able to capture his queen or something to that effect. But this is a pin. Okay, and the game goes on. He tries to chase me out of there. I decide to just go ahead and take that knight, put him in check. See, because his knight is protecting his pawn at the moment. My idea was that I wanted to recapture my pawn, you see, but I couldn't do that as long as that knight was there. But when I pinned him, I would have been able to do it, and he couldn't move the knight. So this is some of the tactics that you're going to be learning as you learn how to play chess. My tactic was to pin his knight so that he couldn't move it, so that I can recapture the pawn, because I was a pawn down. But he threatened my bishop, and I decided to just go ahead and trade my bishop for the knight. As we covered in the beginning, knights and bishops are approximately the same amount, three points each. So we went ahead and traded, and then I went ahead and captured my pawn, his pawn. In other words, I got my pawn back, so the material is now even. So the game goes on, and I don't know if you noticed, his king is kind of open. He's got double pawns. Excuse me. Here and here. So this is a weakness for him. He castled, and here's where I missed an opportunity. As it turns out, I had a phone call from a friend, and I started talking to him. Here I am playing online chess, and I castled without thinking while I was talking, when I realized that what I should have done was I should have forked his rooks. This would have been the right move to do, because then that would have been a fork, and he would have lost one of his rooks. Even if he moved his bishop out of the way or something to that effect, and recaptured my knight, I would have at least gotten a knight. I would have at least gotten a rook for a knight, which is what they call winning the exchange, because a rook is worth 5 points, whereas a knight is only worth 3. So I missed this opportunity because I was distracted. But it turns out that my opponent was not quite as good of a player as I was, while, of course, the last 10 games before this one, I actually lost them all, so I was the weaker player on the previous games. But in any case, this particular opponent was the weaker player. And even though I missed this great opportunity, I went ahead and won this game. I went ahead and took that pawn anyway, even though he moved his rook. But so it gave me a pawn up in at least. So I threatened his rook. See, as you can see, I went ahead and threatened his rook. Okay, so there's quite a few blunders going on here. I missed a few things. He blundered a couple of times, but I'm not going to go into detail because you're just beginning player. I just wanted to see if I can spot some of the tactics that I was trying to teach you, that I was going to make a video of, but instead of making the video, I'm showing you this game. So I move my knight. I'm threatening his rook. Okay, trying to chase his rook out of there. Okay. I move this rook, and I'm threatening his bishop. Now here's, I tell you, I blundered here too. Somewhere around here. Let me see if it was back here. Oh, it was back here. Instead of me moving my knight here, I should have put one of these pawns here to protect this pawn. Instead, I wasn't thinking again, and I moved my knight. I moved my knight and allowed him to take a pawn. But even though I made this mistake, a better player would have been able to take that as an advantage. So apparently, even though I was making mistakes, I was still in a better position than him. As you can see, my king is basically very safe here. I've got 2 knights, a rook, and a bishop sitting around it. This bishop is protected by this pawn. Okay, so if he were to try and take if he were to take my bishop, I would recapture his rook, and I would be up in the exchange. Okay, right now I'm threatening his bishop. He protects it with a pawn. And I missed a couple of opportunities here too, I think. Let me see. Well, anyway, he threatens my knight with a pawn. And I was actually kind of waiting for him to do that because I was actually wanting to move my knight out. Okay. He moves his rook back over, I don't know for what reason. And he blundered his bishop. You see, instead of moving his rook over, I guess he was distracted. I'm not sure if it was a he or she, but whoever it was, forgot about his bishop. So he moved the rook, and I just went ahead and took the bishop. So this player wasn't exactly the best player. I was able to, even with my mistakes, I was able to get the advantage. So he stacks his rook, which is a good thing to do. But I went ahead and threatened his rook. Now, I guess that's okay move. He threatened my knight, but I'm protecting it with the pawn, so I ignore it. I stacked my rooks. My idea was to go ahead and take his bishop, and he couldn't recapture because my other rook is there, and he couldn't recapture the rook with the king. But he went ahead and moved his knight, not only attacking my rook, but also protecting his bishop. So I went ahead and moved my rook back. He threatens my my knight. I move my knight and threatening his rook. So this is kind of a silly game. It's not it's not what you would call an expert game. There was obviously mistakes made. I lost pawn. He lost bishop. I missed an opportunity for a rook fork. You know, you have to excuse my voice. I'm sorry. So then I got the idea that I was going to fork his knight and his rook, but notice my rook is in my own way. But it's kind of like an X-ray. Okay, all I have to do now is move my rook if he doesn't notice it, and he didn't. So I moved my rook out of the way, and I don't know what made him decide to move his knight instead of his rook, but this was a blunder of his. Certainly I'm going to go ahead and take his rook and let him take my bishop. The rook is worth 5, bishop is 3. I won the exchange. Why did he move his knight? Maybe he thought his knight was more important. I don't know. But this was definitely one of his crucial mistakes. So again, this is not a grandmaster game. I'm not that great of a player, but I'm certainly better than this person. And from here on, it's you know, I definitely have the advantage. I'm definitely going to win this game. Again, unfortunately, I was also being distracted, and I was talking to somebody, and we were on the clock. And at this point, I started to realize that I was running out of time. Right around here somewhere. No, actually, it was later in the game. I think it was around here. I realized we only had a couple minutes left on the clock. And so I just started to make some very quick moves, knowing that I was going to win. And again, I let him get too close with his pawns. At this time, we had about a minute and a half left, and he had a little less than that. He was completely running out of time. He had less than a minute left. He had a few seconds, and I just started to let him... I just started, you know, he threatened my rook, and he thought he was going to pull that trick on me where, you know, his idea was I would take his rook, and he would take mine and queen. Little does he know that, first of all, I'm up 2 rooks against 1, and I'm getting ready to queen a pawn. All I have to do is get rid of his pawn, and that trick is over. And that's exactly what I did. I let him take the rook because I was up, and I'm getting a queen. He threatens my rook. I decide to just pull it out of the way. He moves his pawn up. I get my queen. He's in check. Okay. He moves away. I check him again. He moves away. But here's the thing. He really... I guess if he moved down here, I wouldn't have been able to take the rook. But I would have certainly brought the... I would have put him in check again, and it would have been going back and forth. But anyway, he immediately moved out of the way. Just let me take his rook, which was foolish of him. And from here on, he ran out of time. Somewhere around here. Yeah, he ran out of time right here. You know, I just moved my rook there. I took his bishop, and he ran out of time. If we still had time on the clock, I obviously won this game. He couldn't do much except run away, and I would have checkmated him in the next 3 or 4 or 5 moves. But like I said, I was distracted, and I let the clocks run out. I didn't realize what time it was. But I just wanted to show you some of the tactics that were being shown here, where For example, one of the last tactics where his idea was that he thought I was going to take his rook, but I went ahead and just simply took the pawn so he couldn't get a queen. I gave him my rook because I was already up in material. It was time to give him back some of it, but I should have never let it get this far. I should have never let him get that far with the pawn in the first place. I should have attacked his bishop in the first place a while ago. But in any case, some of the other tactics, of course, were the forks that I showed you, okay, and the skewers and the forks. Here, he foolishly moved his he foolishly moved his knight out of the way instead of his rook. But he should have seen this tactic before he moved his other rook. Okay, he could have done something with this. For example, he could have perhaps moved his knight here. No, that wouldn't have worked because I was just taking it with a pawn. Let me see. Any case, that's one of the tactics. And the other was the stacking of the rooks. Okay. I mentioned the forks. Let me see. Yeah, here's where I missed the opportunity of the fork. A fork is one of the most common chess tactics there is, one of the most beginning. And a rook fork with a knight. A knight is one of the most dangerous pieces when it comes to forks. And of course, like I said, I missed this one. But apparently my opponent was so much of a lesser player that even though I missed this crucial fork, I was able to beat him anyway. But yeah, instead of me castling, the right move would have been to fork to play. That would have been the variation I should have done. Okay. And that would be forking with a knight, his two pieces. So he might want to, for example, move out of the way, then whichever rook I decide to take. Okay. Well, we'll just shut off the engine. Okay. So whichever rook I decided to take, he would either take with the king or with the other rook. Okay. So I would lose a knight for a rook, and that would mean I would be winning the exchange. You know, from here, I suppose I could castle, and you know, and so on. But in any case, it didn't go that way. I castled and out of a mistake, and I won anyway. So I hope you get some feel for the game by looking at this one, understanding what pins are. Let me see, what was the original pin? My idea of pinning his knight. Okay. Okay, so he moves his knight there, and I pinned it with the idea that I was going to be able to take the pawn back that I lost before. But he threatened me instead. And I just went ahead and captured his knight, and I got my pawn back anyway. So that's another pin. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this game, and I hope you learned a little bit from it by watching it. In this playlist that you're going to see this video in, it's the Chess Academy 2.1. You'll find a video from the St. Louis Chess Academy or Chess Club, or the St. Louis, however they call it. I would highly recommend watching it. In addition, there's my other academy and many videos that also cover pins, forks, skewers, etc. So you can learn from those. It's very important that you get the full understanding and know, you know, as like the back of your hand, how the pieces move. And Passant, I know that I've got several videos on that Passant. All the specific, the castling, all the really critical beginning moves of how pieces move and capture, etc. Before you try to pick up tactics, because if you don't know how the pieces move and capture, obviously you're not going to understand the tactics. But they're very basic. Pins and forks are very basic. Skewers are slightly more advanced. But other tactics, there's a long list of tactics you can learn through my other Chess Academy and other videos. I would definitely highly recommend, if you're a YouTuber, obviously you are, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the St. Louis Chess Academy or Chess Club. I still can't remember what they call themselves, but it's the St. Louis Chess Club, and they hosted the Sinquefield Cup. They've got these lectures. They got lots of video lectures. Some are for kids and some are for adults. I actually watch the kids ones because it reminds me of the basic stuff, because I'm not a grandmaster, but I do watch the advanced ones as well. But the stuff for the kids reminds me of the stuff that I might have forgotten, and including the ones about the pins and forks and other tactics. So together with my academy and looking at the subscriptions that I use, subscribe to them yourself. I would recommend you subscribe to them as well. You should be able to become an excellent chess player in a short period of time. I know I have become a much better chess player by watching these videos. So by watching the other subscribed videos that I subscribe to. So in any case, again, I hope you enjoyed this. Keep on playing and enjoy the game. After all, it is a game. Thank you. Okay, that wasn't the right button. Sorry.